And thanks everybody for joining. My name is Sean Allen. I'm lucky enough to be part of the amazing team over at Reveille, and I'll be taking you through the presentation today. This is the first in a three-part series covering the ABCs of complete control of content services, and I appreciate you guys making the time to join. So that we can make this as informative as possible, please don't hesitate to add your questions to the chat window or Q&A window in the WebEx client. You can see the graphic on the screen there that represents where that is. We'll have plenty of time to address that at the end. So what do we mean by complete control? At the highest level, it's really about having everything you need to properly run an environment and all of the millions of things that come with that. We're going to be talking about content services today, your ECM infrastructure. It's already large and getting larger and more critical as it is a linchpin in your digital transformation initiatives. Content is at the heart of so many pieces of an enterprise, and content services is what keeps it all flowing. These environments can be incredibly difficult to manage, and through this series, we're going to talk about how to make it easier. The first in the series is A for analytics, or visibility, being able to see what happened before, what's happening now, and what's likely to happen in the future. Without clear vision, decisions and operations are more than just hard, they become nearly impossible. What's needed is more than simple analytics, though. You need a system that is able to react as well. Think of that as active analytics. And so we'll go through the rest of this presentation talking through the analytics angle. The remaining parts of the series will be talking about best practices for how to take what we talk about today and other things into practice in the proper way. And we'll be doing that co-presenting with Patrick McGrath, who owns all the product marketing for the Enterprise Content Division of EMC. And in the third part of the series, we'll be talking about customers in action, where you'll be able to see exactly how other people have been able to make this work inside their organizations. So if you're like most organizations with these increasingly critical and complex systems, you're continually frustrated by a lack of visibility. That lack of visibility creates some massive problems. First, unhappy users. People in your organizations that are always complaining about why document views are so slow and why they can't get access to certain things and why their applications that are using this content aren't working properly, and any of the 1,000 other reasons why they complain to you. And as we all know, unhappiness tends to roll downhill. Unknown health status. We all know the results here, and it's basically outages, slowdowns and outages. And that turns into a never-ending series of those mind-numbing blame storm, whack-a-mole war rooms to pinpoint issues where everybody is sitting around and pointing at everybody else. And escalations end up dictating your schedule instead of the other way around. It also leads to blind capacity planning, being flat-footed when new and interesting projects come along to make your company more productive. And so as new opportunities are seen to create a new application that utilizes content services, et cetera, do you know if you have the capacity in your system to support the incoming user load, the incoming view load, the incoming load on your content services infrastructure? And then audit, painful audit. Everybody has them and everybody hates them. How much time do you spend pulling together data to support the different audits that you have in your organization? How big of a deal is it when you can't properly answer auditor questions? And what did your last audit look like? Most people say that it's pretty ugly, finding out things they wish they would have known before the auditor saw them for sure. And leaky security, user behavior. How are people using the system? So many different aspects of securing not only the system and the access to the system, but also the behavior of people inside of the system to notice anomalies. So if somebody suddenly starts grabbing many more documents than they normally do, is that bad? Is that something that we want to intervene on? And poor application adoption. So there's significant investment and hopes that ride on these new apps. Do you know how they're being used? Do you know if they're being used? Because a failure here can be devastating because these new apps are core to digital transformation. They are core to ongoing competitiveness of your organization. And blurry management reporting. No way to track or report on SLAs or KPIs. You can't give the visibility you need to create confidence, and you can't get the metrics you need to fine-tune the engine, right, the operation. So it's like that image in the background right there. It's like you're driving a car with a fatally flawed windshield. And to top it off, you have occasional engine problems that crop up, but you can't pop the hood. Your view is obscured to a point where you are constantly running into things at high speed. You're missing turns. You're accumulating distrust from your passengers, which in our case are users and executives in your organization. There is increased pressure to fix this windshield, as you aren't the only one that needs to see or wants to see the road ahead. You have this immensely critical component to moving your company forward, but everything is blurry. Everyone is wondering if you're going to make it to the destination. But to try and engineer a new windshield, you have to let go of the wheel. Any course correction you could have done is significantly hampered. So in today's world, in your car, what happens when you start texting while you're cruising around at 90 miles an hour in traffic? Well, nothing good. Horrible accidents. While nothing as dire as that happens in our world, the analogy still holds. Without proper visibility, bad things happen. So aside from content services becoming more critical, there are additional factors at play pushing you to try and fix this windshield problem with haste. And your increasingly savvy business users are more and more unhappy. They're fundamentally just over it. They're over the issues that they run into integrating or using the applications that leverage these systems. And as passengers, you know, to continue our analogy, they're tired of being knocked around. They're tired of missing opportunities to go in new directions, to try new things, and they're also tired of being the one to let someone know when something was run over, right? So meaning they're tired of being the one to report a problem. They expect the system to operate smoothly. And users have had their expectations changed by the myriad of amazing consumer-grade apps they use day to day. What they will accept as usable and reasonable has forever changed. Keeping up with that is pretty intimidating. So this begins to look for other options, a new ride, as it were. In our world, that means software as a service, outsourcing, shadow IT, solving their short-term problem, but creating much larger headaches down the road. Splintering, solution sprawl, no integration, no control. Where does all this leave you? Where does it leave your business? So enough of the gloom. Let's talk about how it could be. You fix those issues while the car is still doing 90, not having to stop for a moment. Why is that important? Because if you have to stop the car to make those changes, everyone else just passes right on by. And now there's a perfectly clear windshield, and you can see everything, like how users are interacting with shared services, what they're doing, how it's configured, and other interesting sites. You've graduated from simple up and down status to user and operational analytics across all of your content services, active analytics. You've moved from reactive to proactive with a clear view into the performance of all components. You can see user behavior, putting you in a much better position to assess security and compliance risk. There's a heads-up display in the form of dashboards, graphs, reports, analytics, SLAs, KPIs. They're all showing you from the highest level down to individual transactions and database calls precisely what's happening, arming you with every bit of detail necessary to get ahead and stay ahead, both of your content services operational issues and your overall competitiveness. Autopilot has been added to correct when you start heading in the wrong direction, even doing some engine maintenance. This is automated remediation of issues in content services, whether it be the core platform performance, corrective security actions, or otherwise. This gets to the active analytics that I talked about earlier. As an example, wouldn't it be great if the system could temporarily suspend a particular user's activity if it were noticed that they were accessing thousands of documents when normally they access tens? How about if you could track peak loading and load patterns so that you were well in front of upcoming capacity issues and getting real-time performance alerting and problem triage to stay ahead of issues as they develop with remediation to handle them before they ever become a problem? Be able to quickly feed the audit discovery process so you can focus on more interesting and valuable parts of your day. See how users are adopting new apps by detecting user activity across shared services. See what features they're using and what their experience was like when they did. Be able to see hiccups in the adoption cycle so you can fix them and have healthy launches. Get tracking capability for usage across your shared services for reporting, SLAs, chargeback, KPIs, and more. All of this leads to business and IT are much happier and can see what needs to be seen. Critical decisions can be made instantly, fed by proper clarity to ensure that they are the right ones. Course corrections are simple. New paths can be seen well in advance. If your business users have all of the visibility that they need, you and they can figure out what off-ramps that need to be taken, what on-ramps need to be taken, right? So new applications and new uses of the now solid and reliable content services in your organization. These moves improve overall operational excellence, company efficiency, market competitiveness, and other things. If you can see the road ahead, if you're properly informed, you and your company are in a much better position to take advantage of a moving market. Content services becomes a well-tuned asset that the business can rely on to be a key part of the digital transformation initiatives that are core to the ability of your company to compete going forward. So all of this sounds great, but how do we get there? And the problems are that the number of people it takes to re-engineer this particular windshield from scratch and replace it at 90 miles an hour is pretty daunting. Even if you were able to figure out the different sets of APIs into these differing applications and infrastructure components to gain access to these products in your content services chain, tying them all together is a significant effort and requires not only development expertise and significant time, but also deep contextual experience in ECM. While you're doing all of this work, things aren't remaining static. So to continue the analogy that I've been using, the road, the obstacles, route, ramps, and even the car you're in are constantly changing. So even if you manage to build a perfect windshield, it only fits for so long. The content, infrastructure, scope, how content services are used, new content-based or content-involved apps, and the ECM applications themselves are all changing. And to top it off, this is just one of 100 other things that you need to be focusing on. This builds to a big explosion of conflicting priorities, time, and user expectations. So can it be done? Absolutely. At Reveille, we already have the windshield, something we've been refining for about a decade. And we've made it powerfully simple to perfectly fit it into your car. So whatever your content infrastructure, we slide in and help everything work together. We created and constantly maintain deep and direct connections to all the applications in your content services chain, like Documentum, Captiva, and others. We've built and continue to expand the heads-up display. It is pre-programmed and extensible with dashboards, graphs, alerts, etc., that business and IT need to get perfect clarity into what's happening from how the engine is performing to how users are behaving and beyond. There is intelligence woven in to create a sort of autopilot for operations. existing proactive actions that keep everything running smoothly, that can be extended and made more custom for your world. The entire system is constantly changing is constantly watching as everything changes around it, reconfiguring based on the environment. Like so roads, ramps, obstacles, the car itself, through an auto-discovery functionality that understands the specific components of each of these different ECM applications and how they relate to one another. We create a topology and we keep it fresh automatically. All of this is built by people with specific and extensive knowledge and expertise in the content space. Decades of experience built, and this is all built on a platform that was purpose-built to solve this exact problem. All of the context and awareness required to truly understand your content services are built in and continue to be updated over time. So as everything changes, as it inevitably does, we're on top of that so you don't have to be. The solution fits like a glove. You end up with a car that is constantly tuned, driving down the road at whatever speed you need, that gives you perfect visibility into everything around you and helps guide you along the way. So let's talk a little bit about some successes that we have seen over time, pretty briefly, in the life sciences space. A particular client of ours in global pharma that had over 1,700 users via 10 different applications on top of their content services infrastructure across 7 different countries. And what they found after an analysis was that they gained back in productivity because of avoiding downtime $3.75 million. And in the financial services space, one of our customers who's an online mortgage lender that are processing 2,000 different document types across 70 million pages annually. And what they found is that after employing some batch task monitoring, they were able to accelerate their time to resolution by 97%. And these are not unique across our customer base. There are significant gains and advantages to implementing Reveille to manage that content services infrastructure and give you the visibility that you need. And so I'd love to invite all of you that are using Documentum and or Captiva to use the intro tier of our solution. It's called Starter, and it's available for free today. It's available at this URL, and through the use of auto discovery can be up, running, and providing you value in a matter of minutes. You can see for yourself the immense value Reveille can bring to your content services in the form of a very simple to use and easy to implement solution. So I very much appreciate everybody joining today to go through this overview of A is for analytics and visibility and how Reveille approaches the problem. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have at this point.
All right, Sean, we've actually had a number of questions being submitted throughout the chat or throughout the webinar and via the chat and Q&A functionality. For anybody who isn't aware, it should be at the top or the side of your screen. If you've got any other questions, feel free to send them in. But let me take a quick look, and I'm going to try to ask some that numerous people are asking. The first one, Sean, I think you might have mentioned this, but people were asking if a recording of the webinar will be available. And the answer is yes, we will make it available likely by end of day tomorrow, otherwise early next week. We will get that out to you. All right, in terms of other questions, Sean, we got a question about what different content management systems does Reveille support?
So the different content management systems that we support are really the entire ECM suite from EMC. So Documentum, Captiva, InfoArchive, Expression, et cetera, from IBM with FileNet, from Microsoft with SharePoint, and really many others that are across the entirety of the really the ECM marketplace at large.
Fantastic. Here's a specific question around D2. Sean, do you know if anyone's using Reveille for seeing how a newly developed D2 application is being used?
Yeah, actually, there are a couple of use cases. That's an interesting question. So first and foremost, we can and do surface ourselves as a plugin for into D2, but we've also had customers that use us to take a look at the other applications that are plugging into the D2 framework as well. So the short answer to that question is yes, absolutely, we've done that and have customers doing it today.
Great. And another one related to Documentum. Do I need to enable Documentum audit logging for Reveille to work?
Yes. The answer is no, but it is a very common question. And the reason I think that most people ask this question is that the audit logging, when you turn it on in Documentum, is pretty heavyweight. So it's a smart question to ask, because if you did have to turn it on, it basically creates an additional load on the system that impacts the overall performance of it. So it's kind of a bad requirement to have, and that is not one that we do. We can do everything that we're doing through native integrations and API calls into Documentum without having to turn on audit logging.
Great. Here's another question. And guys, I apologize in advance if I don't get to all the questions. I'm trying to bounce around and get a couple questions from numerous folks who are submitting these. But here is one that we also got about, let's see. Oh, hold on, I just lost it. There we go. Oh, how does Reveille help with capacity management?
So one of the most difficult things about capacity planning and capacity management is having enough detailed information to take a look at how your system is being used and trending that over time. And so what Reveille is doing is gathering all of that detail at a fairly granular level so that we can take a look right now at what's happening, right? And that helps us answer some questions about real-time performance. But we store that over time so that we can start to do some trending and analysis on, if I have this many users inside of Documentum, with this set of applications and this set of use cases, that generally means that this is the footprint on the infrastructure or on the system. And so I can take that and I can dial it up and see if I'm going to be introducing new applications, if I'm going to be introducing new users, or if I'm going to be doing both of those, or really anything to the system that's going to change the performance characteristics. I have some really good trending data and analysis to allow me to say, you know what, in the next 6 months, I'm going to need a beefier set of infrastructure components and really start to plan for those things so that I can get ahead of the capacity issues, et cetera. So it really starts with gathering a significant set of very detailed information about how the system is operating day to day, and then doing some analytics and analysis on top of that to see where it's going. All right. Let's see if I can find a question or two here as well. Here's one. We're being asked who is using Documentum and how many users are there on the system, right? So yeah, I guess just two examples of some technical questions that get asked every now and again, and they're asking if Reveille can help with that. The short answer to that question is yes. We have, as a part of the data that we're gathering that I mentioned in the answer to the capacity question, we have very detailed information about what users are in the system, what applications they're using, how often they're in there, how long they're in there, down to individual transactions at the user level. So we can certainly answer those simple higher level questions, as well as being, empowering you to answer a number of different questions as well.
Great. Sorry about that. I had gone on mute, so I was actually asking a question, but you did not hear me. Here's one that just came in a minute ago. What's the ideal time in the project life cycle to add in analytics? So pre-implementation, post?
Great question. And that is the answer that we've seen work in a number of different customer situations, even though it may seem counterintuitive, is pre. And the reason is because there are a significant number of things that you can learn in about how you do an implementation by having this analytics in place. Now, if it's a brand new implementation, then there's not much that we can provide from an analytics perspective because there's not a running system for us to take a look at. But if you're talking about upgrades or new applications or anything along those lines, having analytics in place, having the visibility to see how things are currently running, and make good judgments on what this new implementation will look like and how it will impact things, et cetera, is really quite valuable. So we've had a number of customers that have utilized Reveille in advance of their upgrade cycles to provide significant additional visibility, and you can kind of think of it as almost upgrade assurance because you know what things are going to look like and you're going into what is generally a pretty complicated undertaking with your eyes wide open.
All right. And Sean, I know we only have a couple more minutes, so we're going to go through a few more questions, but then I'll give you a little bit of time to wrap it up as well. We do have a couple of folks who have a number of questions and some who are also asking about a more specific demo. So could you give a brief overview of how they can either get a specific demo or if they have, a long list of questions, how we can get them on the line with somebody who can talk through them?
Sure, yeah. So I'll sum up a generic answer to that and say that the best way, the two best ways, I should say, so two good ways of kind of next step engaging with Reveille and getting some more detailed questions answered is to, one, try it for yourself. Go to reveillesoftware.com/starter for EMC and sign up for the starter tier of our solution. You'll be able to get it in-house and really run it through its paces and see it start adding value for you. And secondarily, and this one is probably more valuable if you have some pretty specific questions right now, and that's just to come out to the website and fill out a contact us form, and we'll get directly in contact with you and we'll have a more detailed conversation, get folks on the line that can have a very detailed technical conversation with you. And it's worth noting that the questions that we do get during the session that we don't have an opportunity to get to during our time, we will follow back up with you directly and answer those questions as well.
Perfect. I think we've got time for about one more question before we wrap this up. Somewhat of a general one, how does Reveille contribute to content analytics?
Great question. Yeah, and it's an interesting one because there's, I'm glad it was asked because there's so many different types of analytics out there, and where we're focusing our energy is on user and on operational analytics and active analytics from that perspective. Where the vendors, so where somebody like EMC is going to be focusing, they're going to be focusing on content analytics, and those work very, very well together. Because among other things, Reveille puts the user at the center and not only generates the information to calibrate performance, but also renders analytics that point to user productivity, user behavior, including access, and business service level assurance. So you can see where there is there's a very complementary fit to where Reveille is focusing on user and operational analytics and where the core vendors are focusing on in the content analytics space. And that question is a great one, and I can't do the answer to it justice in a quick non-interactive call like this, so happy to follow up with you offline to talk more about that.
Fantastic. Well, it looks like we are at the 11:30 mark, and I know we always want to be cognizant of people's times. We said that we would end at 11:30 on the dot. So as you mentioned, for the questions that some of you guys have submitted that we haven't had a chance to get to, we will follow up with you. But Sean, if you just want to wrap up the webinar.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Whitney. So fundamentally, I just want to thank everybody for their time for coming out. I hope it was instructive on what we mean by analytics and where it fits into your ECM infrastructure, into your content services infrastructure. And we'd love to have you join us for the next two events in this overall webinar series. The next one is B for best practices, where, as I mentioned, we'll be joined by EMC to talk about some best practices that they see in the field and in their customer use. And then we'll come back to the third in the series, which is C for customer in action. And that's where we'll see more information about how our customers have specifically put it have put Reveille to good use. And you can get access to, well, you've already signed up by being as a part of this. You'll get notified when those are coming along, and we'd love to have you join us then. So thank you, everybody, for your time and for your attendance, and I hope it was useful. Have a great day.